Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this very important panel discussion. My name is Heather Pickin. The focus of the summit is really talking about the future is female and women entrepreneurs uniting, but more specifically, I really wanted successful Black women entrepreneurs to be here to create a story to inspire other Black women that really need the guidance, the tools, the wisdom, and also allowing this panel to be educational for women such as myself, white women entrepreneurs, and how we can be part of this discussion, how we can become more united together, because I truly believe the future is female and women entrepreneurs are right now on this planet changing the world with their work. And I have some amazing women that have come to this panel today. I'm really excited. I'm excited to learn about their stories. I'm excited to learn about their success, their wisdom, and sharing some of the things that they're working on today, their vision, their mission, and their inspiration. So I wanted to start off this panel discussion with Jamie Mays. Her story is really interesting, and she's going to share that with you. And she has a book coming out. We were talking about before we started this panel how timely her book that she started writing 3 years ago, how important it is for what we're going through right now. And so I want to welcome Jamie to the discussion. And really, her superpower is about helping others to gain the power through literary enlightenment and meaningful conversations. So Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So share us a little bit about your background and the book that you have coming out and why it's so important.
So I think one of the things that I definitely like to share with people is that I grew up in a small community, a place called DeRidder, Louisiana. And I actually grew up in the housing projects. And I was born to a teenage mom who was a single parent. And I experienced a lot of the hardships that I see so many other people experience today along the way. Not having a lot of financial resources, a family facing a lot of stress and depression, especially when you live in a single parent home, and being a girl who had a lot of identity problems, battling everything from problems with colorism, learning how to appreciate my dark skin, to just finding a place where I felt like I could fit in at my school because I was a child who did not have the same thing everybody else had and had different interests and wanted to figure out how I could really fit into this world that was a little bit different in my eyes. And so by the time I always liked writing. When I was a little kid, I enjoyed that. My mother introduced me to some very wonderful and powerful and influential Black figures at a young age. So Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. Maya Angelou, even Oprah, who was like the big woman on the scene at that time, right? But for me, that was really important because she reminded me of myself with a beautiful skin and a smile and the ambition that I could see even at 5 years old. I'm looking at this woman like she's really awesome and I can connect with her. And from there, I just kind of had the idea that I wanted to do something unique also, but didn't really know what it was at that time. By the time I made it to high school, I had been writing casually. I wrote poetry. And I really started writing poetry because I suffered a lot with childhood depression because my mother suffered very, very heavily with depression for a long time. And I definitely say that God inspired me to start writing because it was the way that my life was saved. Because I was a child that definitely considered suicide and wanted to give up. And the pen became the power that helped me see other possibilities. And so initially it started off where I just wrote for myself to help me cope with feeling frustrated, feeling hopeless, feeling desperate. Even when I got angry, I would write all the time. And when I got to high school, I was in a club called 4-H, and it's an agriculture club. And the irony of that was that I lived in a housing project, so there wasn't much I could do that was agriculture related. But when we got ready to go to a conference, my 4-H leader actually suggested that I participate in the public speaking contest because she knew I enjoyed writing so much. And I entered my first contest, and I was completely inspired because honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was Dr. Martin Luther King and the wonderful speeches he always gave. So I thought to myself, this is my chance to do my thing on like a smaller scale, but to share my speech for a change. And the first time I did it, it was an absolutely electrifying experience to share hope with other people, to share my writings with an audience, and I was hooked. And so in high school, I became a competitive public speaker. I always tell people, some people played sports, a lot of people were in the band, but I did speech competitions. I joined a performing troupe. Every opportunity I had to participate in a speech contest of any sort, I took those opportunities, and I was blessed because I started winning and I was pretty good at it. And so that gave me the strength to start looking at my situation in a different way. I evolved from feeling that I had no options in life to really thinking to myself, I can use my story to help other people. I can use my story to connect with others, and maybe there's something I'm saying that other people can relate to. And so sharing that story, sharing those stories with others, and empowering others through speaking became a great passion for me. And it's been 22 years now since I delivered my first speech. And by the time I continued writing those speeches, eventually my interest segued into wanting to find out how to write more fiction. How do I write essays more effectively? And how do I teach others how to do this? So I went to college, earned my degree in English, and I actually spent 12 years as an English teacher while building my platform as a speaker and published author. And so the message that I always love to share with other people is that when we understand the power of writing and communicating with others, we have the ability not only to transform our lives, but to transform the lives of others. And I think that the power of the pen and the power of speaking is a connection across color lines that, if we use it the right way, can really help revolutionize our world, especially considering what we are dealing with right now. And when I decided to write my newest book, which is my seventh one, I did not imagine 3 years ago that we would be experiencing the climate that we are right now. However, I definitely knew that at this time we had had the incidents with Trayvon Martin, and we had had Eric Garner's death, and I have a son that is 5 years old. And so for me, part of the writing process was to explore the feelings I had about what was going on, but also to create a story that examines how women feel and cope with our sons, our communities, our workplace, and the world around us, but also to talk about how the situations that are going on in this country are affecting the kids that we are bringing through in the generations to follow.
Very, very powerful. Yeah, kids are definitely going to change everything that is going on right now, and hopefully preventing things like that in the future. Now, I'm curious. So you said you're launching your book. Where can people purchase your book?
The book will be on Amazon, and it will actually be available this Friday. And we're so excited because I am hosting a virtual book release. And we are going to treat this release the same way that we've treated others in the past, with a full conversation that is engaging. And my hope is that this book will revolutionize the discussion among people and among race lines about what we have to do to move our culture forward in a more united way. We understand that this world is not perfect, but unity, more unity is achievable. And so I hope that this book will really give an honest exploration of what life is like through the lens of Black women, Black families, and even communities who are trying to evolve into something different, but still have people who are holding on to those old traditions, you know, and what do we have to do to move forward?
I love that, and it's such an important message that, especially, I really feel it does start with community. Where I live, I mean, there's people just banding together, signs everywhere. So I think books like yours, I think if more people are writing these stories, the message is going to get louder. That it's just so important. So I appreciate that, and we'll have the link below so anyone can purchase your book. I want to move on to, I want to talk about mindset. And I know I have a couple people on my panel that will talk about that. First, let's go to Maureen Chiana. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. And she is a neuro leadership and resilience business consultant and award-winning speaker. So she really helps business owners to scale their business, become more high performance. And I really want to talk about, with your story, how you got into this, because we're going to talk about rewiring your brain to become limitless, and why this mission and vision is so important to you as a Black woman entrepreneur.
Thank you, Heather. Right, I am a serial entrepreneur, and a few years ago, I opened a business, and 4 years down the line, I was almost, in a place where I just couldn't explain. So the business had been going successfully, and then 4 years down the line, I had to sell it. But then I sold it and lost a lot of money. So I was in such a dark place, and it got to a point that I started asking a lot of questions. I've got a background in medical research, but this business was completely out of my comfort zone. I set up a hair and beauty salon in the area that I lived in the UK, and it was the first of its type. So I started asking questions. Why is it that some people fail and bounce back and some don't? Why do people face a similar situation but different, have different responses to the different situations? So there's a lot of questions going around, and I kind of got into my research brain again, and I then discovered that the power to succeed was in being able to take back control of the brain. And it was so, kind of quite liberating, and a great insight into understanding how we deal with emotions, how we deal with different situations. But for me, it was just really being able to understand what the brain does and how the brain perceives different situations. And that was what led me to the neuroscience. And the next step was then, okay, what do I do with this? And I had to really try it out. I have a background in education because I had been a lecturer and then got into education management, but I also had a background in medical sciences because I had worked in hospital research for years. So I had these two, and I decided, okay, let me work with the education sector and really with kids or youth rather, and see how this works. But in the process, I ended up working with managers and also working with the youth. And I could see the shift in mindset and shift in the belief and expectations that people had of themselves. But in terms of leadership, it was really, it was just amazing to see how once people understood what was going on in their brain, they were able to manage their own self and how they managed people. Also, they were then able to achieve those results that they wanted to achieve much quicker by understanding what their people were going through. So for me, it was just being able to really empower people to be their best. And it's just been really amazing once people understand why they're feeling the way they feel, why they're not doing what they know they want to do, it just makes such a difference, to how people can live their lives.
I love that. My question is, so how do you find it's different as it plays into the Black experience, whether you're male or female, as it relates to their mindset? Have you seen that there's been a lot of blocks that have been stopping Black people in general because they feel like, wait a minute, I have been treated unfairly. So I'm just kind of curious with your thoughts, and of course their upbringing.
Yeah, it really comes down a lot to the cultural experiences that they've gone through, the background that they've been brought up in. And you see, because what happens in the brain basically is like the brain, especially of a child, is like a sponge. So whatever they're experiencing is just literally being absorbed into the brain. So a Black person in one area could have a completely different experience from a different area, and they will react to the same situation very differently. So a lot of times, depending on where you work with people, you find people, it's how they perceive situations. So yes, a lot of Blacks might feel that, okay, even if I try this, I'm not going to get through because of my color, because of the way they see me. Another person will feel, you know what, I'm going to work damn hard and really push through every barrier that I can come across and get what I want to get. So it really comes down to mindset. For me, especially in what's going on now, one of the key things is a lot of the unconscious biases that is going on in a lot of people, that we've kind of had from life, from media, from parents, from teachers, even teachers. So there's a lot of unconscious things in our subconscious that a lot of people are working with, both from the Blacks, but also from the non-Blacks as well. So because you listen to conversations and you don't know what you don't know. Just that's basically one way of putting it. You can only know what you're aware of. So a lot of times people are acting, their behavior is really coming from what is inside them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the point is that it just depends on what you've been exposed to, but also what you're aware of that is inside your brain.
I love that. So let's just say if a Black woman entrepreneur is watching this and she has not been successful in her business, and she has a belief because she grew up in a family where it was harder financially, what are some of the things that you would help her with to get her mind aligned in that right place where she would see herself successful?
Okay, I'll give you a typical example. I was coaching a lady recently who had a project that she wanted to go and speak to people about, basically pitch her product. And she had gone through it. And when I looked through it with her, the price point she had put was extremely low. So when I looked through, the question was, why have you put it at this price point? She went, well, if I go higher, they might not want it. They'll look at me, I'm a Black woman, I'm a woman, and I'm Black. And these are really white men, English white men that I'm going to approach. So I then I knew immediately that the issue here was what's going on in her brain. So the first thing that I worked with her is on her value, how she sees herself. First of all, how she perceives herself, and then the value that she places on herself. Then we had to start looking at the experience she has and really asking questions. Why are you doing this? If you feel you're not good enough, why are you going to pitch to them? No, but then, it's just getting her to realize that how good she is, the experience she has, and then using that to then get her to a place where she then believes in herself. And what she then did was that in fact, I worked with her the morning that she was going for this meeting. She called me again and she went through what, kind of just telling me, I know I'm good at this. I know I can do this. I've got all the experience. I've done this for so many years. Okay, I'm ready. And she went in and she got it. And she came out there screaming. She couldn't believe it. She went that even the pricing, because she said that, but how can I mention this price? My mouth will be wobbling to even mention what I'm asking for. But by the time she got there, what she was able to do was really rewire what she already had in her brain so that she had a new belief in herself and went in and got what she wanted. So the key is to really understand who you are and then now start changing. First of all, you've got to identify what is already in your subconscious, because if you don't know what's there, then you don't know what to change. But it's understanding what is there. And when these doubts start popping up, you start dealing with them so that you can start changing the narrative. So it comes down to, what story are you telling yourself? How do you see yourself? What value have you placed on yourself? Yes. And then start changing that to be able to get what you want.
I love that. It's such a powerful story about understanding the subconscious mind and the stories, how people get trapped in stories. I also find just across the board, women in general will tend to devalue themselves. So your work is so important in helping Black women, helping the Black community, and just women in general, so that they can, just transform their thinking. So I appreciate that. And any other tips that you want to share, and we'll kind of circle back with everyone here. Any free gifts? Where can people learn more about your work?
Okay, my website, I think I sent you an email.
We'll post that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so my website, I've got an online academy where I run courses, which is the Mindsight Academy. So I'm really offering 20% off all the courses in the academy to people. So I've put a coupon code there that you can use to get 20% off any of the courses as well. My website, my personal website is maureenchiana.com, and there's a lot of information about what I do, about the courses that we offer, and also the neuro coaching. And if you're into podcasts, you can listen to my podcast, which is called Lead to Excel Podcast. And it's on Spotify, Apple, anywhere really, even on YouTube. It's called Lead to Excel Podcast.
Perfect. Great. And we'll have that information. Thank you so much for sharing the story. Again, I feel that when we all hear those stories of success, that it's part of it is in our head and our subconscious mind, that really gives us the tools to transform and lift everyone up. So I just think that's so powerful. And speaking about stories, the next person I want to talk to is Oniye Anike. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly.
Oniye.
Oniye, yes, say that 10 times. One of the interesting things as I was reading your bio, something that was so tragic was a catalyst to transform your life. So I was reading your bio that you were diagnosed with cancer, that really, made you kind of rethink your life's purpose. And I think that is such an important topic. When we look at what's happening in the world today, horrible, horrible things, and everything from, the racism to people being diagnosed with a disease, it really makes us look at, am I doing my own part? Am I living to my highest potential? So I want you to share with everyone your story, going through that transformation, and how we can find that purpose through these dark times.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. So my name is Oniye Anike. I am Nigerian American, I'll put it that way. I was born in Nigeria, but we came here when I was 4. So I've been been in America for over 20 plus years. I'm from, we live in New York. I was raised in Brooklyn, New York. I'm the oldest of four. And our cultural expectations of growing up was very much high achieving. And so there was a high expectation from the parents and culture just be perfect, to do everything well, get good grades in school, never speak out of turn. And so what that did as a young woman growing up in America, in the society, was, for me, it stifled a lot of my voice, because creativity was not something that was really pushed. I was told by my parents, you're going to be a doctor, and that was kind of the trajectory of my life. Nothing wrong with that, but I didn't have the opportunity to express myself or to really learn what how I could utilize my gifts in the way that they were meant to be utilized. And so the trajectory for me was, you got to become a doctor, go to med school. And my junior year of college, decided that was not the right path for me, just because a lot of things with school and classes, and just the self-discovery that started a little bit in college, and being away from my parents and actually being able to discover a little bit about myself. But what that led to was an identity crisis once I graduated. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was meant to do anymore, because here I was being told I was going to go to med school, be a doctor, get married, live happily ever after. Kind of, the plan that most parents understandably want for their children. They want them to do and be better than them. But at the same time, I didn't have the opportunity to really learn who I was, what I wanted, how I was what my legacy or what I wanted to contribute to the world was. And so for the next couple of years, I got a job in higher education, worked 9 to 10, the 9 to 5, overworked actually, was really got burnt out, stressed out from working. I wasn't happy. I knew deep down, I suffered from anxiety and depression. So I knew deep down, like, there's something wasn't right. There was a disconnect there. On the outside, the appearance was, oh, everything's great, I'm happy, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do in life. But deep down inside, there was a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and just not feeling connected. It was almost being removed from everything and everyone. January of 2014 came, and I was diagnosed with leukemia. The cancer had progressed so bad that they had said that I had about 2 weeks, if not less, to live, because it had gotten to that point. So I, found myself one day, I thought everything was great. The next day I'm in a hospital bed being IVs, treatments, being told, like, they have to watch me, monitor me, I was really high risk. And that changed a lot of things for me, because it helped me to start to see where I was in life. What did I want to get out of life? Who did I want to become? Prior to that, like I said, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to leave on this earth. What was my legacy? I'm very, I grew up in a very spiritual, religious home, but I wasn't really connected to that. After the cancer diagnosis, I really became really connected to God, because I spent a lot of hours in the hospital bed praying, because, again, every day was a miracle. They were watching me and monitoring, and there's no guarantee. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And so that became kind of my mantra, was like, you know what, if this is the last day on earth, I want to make sure it's the best. And I love how Maureen talked about, my mindset started to shift in that moment. Until the day they told me, we're going to release you. Right now you're doing well. We're going to send you home, but you have 8 more months of treatment. And I went through, I think they call it the dark night of the soul, really went deep into myself, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of just thinking about my life, and then making a decision in that moment that I was going to live on purpose, every single day. If I only had a year left, then I was going to make that year count. I was going to be very intentional about the way I live my life, and mindful, which is something I think we get so caught up in the routine and the habits of the day to day that we don't take the time to, like they say, smell the fresh air, to be fully present with just ourselves, with the people in our lives, because we're doing the routine, we're going through the day-to-day motions. But I became very, very focused on that, on like, because this could be it. I want to make sure I make it count. Every day I write in my gratitude journal, like, what am I gracious for? What am I appreciative of and thankful for? Because again, prior to that, the people in my life, family, friends, I just took them for granted. They were just going to be there. I was always going to be here. Then I started going through a true reframe, a true transformation. Who did I want to come out as in this? And I went through a healing journey. I started to forgive people that before I recognized a lot of my own anxiety and bitterness was resentment and anger and frustration towards like my parents, towards certain people in my life that I was holding on to, but it wasn't serving me. It was making me angry. It was making me bitter, and it was keeping me trapped and chained. And I had to let that go if I wanted to move forward, if I wanted to create a life of happiness and fulfillment and purpose, and live it the way I believe God had put me on this earth to live it. I had to let go of that. I had to reframe. I had to be more appreciative. I had to be more mindful. And so that started my journey, and the journey led me met my husband, I have my kids, and even, and I started my business last year, actually, with the focus of helping others become aligned with their purpose, helping them transform their life and get out of that rut that we sometimes keep in our heads about, and the stories, the narratives we tell ourselves about who we are and what we can and cannot do or should or shouldn't do, to help people reframe and get out of that so they can live their life with purpose, with intention, with gratitude. Especially, as you said, with everything's happening in the world right now, there's so much that we can sometimes go into ourselves and let the fear, the anxiety take over and become a part of us and our narrative, or we can make the decision to not let that be what it is. Yes, there's a lot going on in the world. I'm very much an action taker. Definitely, I tell people to experience and embrace your feelings. You are entitled to that. You get to feel that, but don't become a slave to that. Don't become so trapped in the fear, the anxiety, the anger, because when you're in anger, your brain can only feel one thing. Feel it, let it go, and then take action. Very much like, what are the next steps? What actions are we going to take to move us forward, in light of everything that's going on in the world? And what's the reframe? What narrative are you going to tell yourself to keep you still in a space where you don't get overwhelmed with what's happening in the world? Because it's very easy to become overwhelmed, right? And get sucked into it. You turn on media, TV, everywhere. You're just like, oh my God, like the world's going to end right now. And we can't go into that place because it can get you into a dark space. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, your story is so powerful because I'm just thinking about one of the things that I know some Black women might be going through that are having maybe they lost their job or their business is not doing too well and they have to provide for their family. So they may be going through their own dark night of the soul. The problem with this country is that we're not providing the resources for the Black community. So my question to you, if a woman is experiencing that right now, what is one thing, because you said, part of it is action. So what is one thing that she can do right now to get herself into a better emotional state?
So our emotions are dictated by our thoughts. I think when we share that. And so really becoming aware of what your thoughts are, because your emotion is kind of like a love letter. It's your body, your brain telling you something's going on, and we interpret it a certain way, and that's the emotion that we feel. So I think it's just about becoming aware of what are your thoughts, what's going on for you, what's coming up for you. Understandably, a lot of people feeling fear, right, with the loss of positions, anger with what's going on. And like I said, I'm very big about you are entitled and allowed to feel your emotions, because that's part of life. However, don't get stuck in it. So reframing those thoughts and putting it into light in a way that can not put you and keep you in a place of a negative, as we like to label it, emotion. So if the emotion is like, I'm fearful right now because I just lost my job, we can reframe it to, yes, I lost my job, but I have the ability, the capability, and the resources to, go out and get another one, or I am able to learn a new skill set in order to get another one. So don't stay stuck in the thought process that's going to keep bringing up those emotions, but find a reframe that is in alignment with you and is doable, and start to have that affirmation, as we call it, that affirmation, start to see that, because that's going to start reframing the thoughts, which is going to change the way you start to feel, because you'll be more hopeful, like, okay, I can do this, I've got this. And that can start the process into the action piece of it.
Beautiful. And where can women learn more about your work? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so you can find me at my name, onyinyecanike.com. That's ONYINYECANIKE.com. And I have a freebie, so I will actually send it to you, because I don't think I gave it to you, but I'll send it to you. It's actually a little guide that helps talk about like transformation, what that is, and helps them like go through their life purpose, their worthiness, and what that looks like.
Perfect. Yes. And we will have that wherever you're watching this video, you can access the free gift. So I want to move the conversation to, we talked about literacy, how important it is. You think about if people, particularly Black people, if they are more educated, that to me is power. And what I like about our next guest, Carylee Carrington, is she calls herself an accidental author. And she's been writing at a very young age. She's been writing poetry, drama, drama shorts, and plays. And she turned her passion into doing that. And part of it was a necessity when she had to help her son to adjust to a public school. And, now she is a children's author. So we're going to be talking about that, the power of teaching to embrace differences, which I think is important, and just the concept of literacy in general. So Carylee, thank you so much for being a guest here.
Hi, Heather. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so I actually have a passion for children's literacy, especially since my mom was a teacher for many years and a literacy coach. And as I said, I've been writing for many years, as well as some of your other guests. I've been writing since I was a young girl, writing poetry. I've written plays, and I never really saw myself as an author or even a children's author. I did not know how to, I didn't want to deal with the rejection really of what some authors go through with putting your book out there and then either having it sit on the shelf of the publisher or sit in someone's office waiting to be read. So as you said, I turned my passion for writing, my passion for children's literacy into it came from necessity when my son was actually approached on the playground and told, and this was only about 3 years ago, he was approached on the playground by a friend and told that he should be playing with children of his own skin color. And that was not something that I was prepared to deal with. It was not something that we had spoken with him about. And this was in the height of, I would say our first really knowing about Black Lives Matter. And we know that some people may have taken it, I guess the wrong way, because I know the Black Lives Matter movement is, yes, we want to embrace the culture and uplift Black people, but it's not about exclusion. So I really wanted to find some way of speaking with him and some way of really letting him know that, we're all we're all one race, the human race, we're all the same. And no, we're not all the same really. But if we were all the same, then it would be really a boring world. My family is mixed. My mother, who recently passed away, unfortunately, but she was very light. So my son would characterize people as either brown or peach. And I said to him, I said, well, what color is grandma? And he said peach. And I said, what color am I? And he said brown. I said, so see, she is my mother. We can all be different and be a part of the same family, and be a part of the same, we can all be friends and we can all get along. So it was really a challenge for me to try to, sorry, to try to really sit down with him and talk with him about that. So I wrote the book, and I don't have it right next to me, Everyone Just Like Me, to be able to speak to him about that. And I used glasses as a way of bridging that gap instead of delving right into race, because he was 5 years old at the time. And I really didn't feel comfortable with speaking to my 5-year-old about race relations. It was not something that I really grew up with. So that was, kind of hard for me. And I grew up, actually, I'm from Jamaica, and I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. So, and now I live in Northern Virginia. So, and my son was, okay, you can go, yeah. Sorry. And, so living in Northern Virginia, it's a totally different world for my kids now than when I was growing up in New York City. So, that actually started a whole journey for me in wanting to teach children about embracing their differences. And that, sparked another book, Pretty Hair, which teaches young girls how to embrace their differences and about the embracing the differences of others, because we never know. Heather, you have straight blonde hair and I have friends that have straight blonde hair and they wanted it to be curly, like mine. So, and yeah, they had blonde hair, and so do I now. So, I wanted to really show children that they can really embrace the differences of themselves and others, and that this is a beautiful world because we're different, because we have, different skin. Like, I just have a little bit more melanin than you, Heather. So it's really, that was really my goal. And then that sparked going and finding other authors in my area to create my new children's show, and to really show children that authors can be from all walks of life. They can be their next door neighbors, they can be their teachers. That has been a catalyst for me, and really, trying to increase that knowledge for children, because of course, I'm a part of the board for Reading is Fundamental Northern Virginia. And yes, reading is fundamental, and getting our children to see the differences, the culture, to see us embracing each other is really what we need to work towards.
I love that. And I do agree, for kids to learn at a very young age to embrace the differences, that is how we're going to transform the world, because racism is taught, period.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's crazy when I see people that don't understand that. and they have whatever their parents or how they grew up. It's just crazy. So what do you think, when we look at the education system, what do you think are some of the things that absolutely need to be changed, not just like in preschool, but on every level, if we're going to solve these problems?
Well, absolutely, there are things that need to be changed, because even prior to my son being told what he was told on the playground by his friend, uh, I actually had an incident with him at his preschool, and he was one of two little black boys in his class, and a new teacher had come and rearranged the classroom, and I knew the name of the other child, the other little black boy that was in the class, and I had gone to pick up my child, and they were outside playing. But when I walked into the room and I saw, there were groups of 4 desks and 5 desks, and then there were 2 desks that were separate from the others, and those desks were that of the 2 black boys in the class. So, you know, I went and I spoke to the director, and I actually had to point it out to her, and she gasped. But this is, the underlying thing that sometimes happens, and you really need to um, evaluate. And I know, in some school systems, they do evaluate all of the teachers that they have. They really do need to, just as police officers, you're thinking about that now, they really do need to evaluate the teachers and really look at how they may treat certain children differently. I was actually brought in to my son's school when he was actually in kindergarten, and I was told that I was coming for an EAP meeting, which I guess because they saw that I was young and that this was my first child in the public school system, that I possibly wouldn't know. But my mother was a doctor of education and I grew up around teachers. So that's another thing that is stereotypically put out. They are the children, or especially Black and minority children, that are most times called for an EAP, because the teacher may not understand their culture and understand that something that they may be doing at home, that might be okay in a form of self-expression. But if you're going to have a blanket system where one child is going to stand out like a sore thumb because they are raised differently, that might be a challenge. So there are different little underlying things that if you go into an inner city school, you will not see that in a suburban school. So it's trying to educate teachers on really how to deal with, well, not even deal with, but teach children individually instead of just having this blanket system. And just like Maureen said, it's all about mindset as well. If you go in with a mindset that this dark child is going to be the disruptor, that is exactly what will happen, and that's exactly what you will see. I know my son is, his teacher, all of his teachers said, he has a heart of gold and he wants to go and help everyone else and all of that. But that one assistant principal actually that brought him into that EAP meeting just saw him helping as him being disruptive.
Wow. Well, yeah, what you're saying is so important. You know, it starts with educating the kids, the teachers, the whole
Mhm.
system, I believe, needs to be overhauled. But just having women such as yourself with a vision, mission, and purpose, starting at the community level and expanding that, I just think that is a positive that we can look forward to
Yeah.
hopefully getting things to change. And that's why I go back to my conversation. I truly believe that it is all of us, all women
Mhm.
together being united and wanting to change this world. I mean, it's just, I cannot say that enough. And I'm just so grateful for everyone that's come onto this panel. And we have a few more people that I want to bring into the conversation. But I want to share where people can learn about your website, and we'll post that below. If you have any
Okay.
final thoughts.
Yes, people, you, as you said, the website is below, and the link to my show as well, that really gets children learning, and get, especially now with libraries being closed, schools being closed, this is a resource for them to be able to uh, get to know authors. It's a little bit like, reading Rainbow of the Past, but instead of having celebrities read the books, we have the authors themselves read the books, and we're having a blast with it. So, I just really hope that everyone supports, and we are growing rapidly. So that's
I love
always a great thing.
that. I love
Yes.
that. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I want to talk about next about leadership. We talked about mindset. We're going to bring that into the conversation. So I want to introduce Tola Arinola. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please correct me if I didn't. And your background for 30 years has been in the financial services. And what you do right now is you focus on coaching, speaking, training. You run masterminds online. You do one-on-one. Your Genius Zone is about personal development, and that everyone has a purpose and everyone has a story. We've been talking about stories today and how we can transform these stories. So thank you so much for coming on to this panel.
Thank you very much for that. So my name is Tola Arinola. And yes, my background was in financial services, and that was quite interesting. I got into it because, some people know exactly what they want to become when they grow up, kind of thing, but I never knew. And it was just an indirect route into it for me. I can relate with Oniye's story of having Nigerian parents, and they wanting you to be this kind of person. So, but then along the line, I realized that I was more interested in the training aspects of my job, the coaching aspects of my job, and I started to develop that. So I started off with financial coaching, and always a way to bring in the numbers, when talking about business and all that. And then I realized that, yes, indeed, I like the aspects of coaching, and that kind of became a passion for me. So, what I do these days is about transformation. It's about helping people to discover their purpose, discovering who you are really. And, I can relate to the stories that have been shared so far, because we have to know what the starting point is, where we're starting from, who we are. We have to have a sense of identity to be able to then use that in order to help support and lead other people. So I had, an experience that, in terms of relationship failure and all that, and that set me back, like a few years, and I had to kind of rediscover myself and just say, who am I really? Who am I? If I'm not being somebody's mom or somebody's wife or what, who am I really? Who is Tola? So it was a journey for me, and I had to uh, say to myself, what are my values? What do I like doing? What's my priority in life? What's my purpose? Why am I even here? And that journey has transformed into what I do now, because I, on the other hand, now can help people look into themselves and say, who are you? You know, why are you here? What's your purpose? What's the meaning in life? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And I think it's such a powerful thing, because we can only lead from a position of influence. We can only lead from what we've discovered of ourselves. So um, it is an exciting thing in terms of being able to help people to identify where they're coming from. Every story is valid. Everything that has happened to us, whether it's a direct route or it's an indirect route or it's accidental, is valid. And all of those skills and all of those learning help us to become who we are eventually. So I run mastermind sessions. So some of them, I mean, throughout this pandemic, I've been doing leadership through crisis, which sometimes I offer for free. So it helps people to be able to come in and see what it is that I do. And the feedback has been amazing for people to be able to sit down and actually have conversations about what is a crisis, you know, what is leadership? You know, some people say crisis makes a leader, but is that really correct? Does crisis actually make a leader? Because what you are on the inside is only going to come to the forefront in the process of a crisis. So does crisis make a leader, or does crisis reveal a leader? So those are some of the kind of things that we talk about. And then we talk about the character of a leader. What makes a leader a leader? Some people, when they hear the word leadership, they want to talk about, oh, our prime minister this and the president that. And it's not about that. It's about ourselves. We as human beings, we are leaders. We've been born to be leaders. So you can lead yourself. That's a starting point. Because if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead no other person. And then for those of us that are parents, we're leading our children as well. We're leading in our communities. Some people, you know, in their community, in the church, different. And then we take that to the workplace and career. And the whole thing about leadership is about influence. Who are you influencing? You know, I could give a recommendation about maybe some jewelry, recommendation about some clothes, and people say, oh, yeah, we trust what she says, and they go ahead and do it. That's influencing. That's leadership already, right there. So that is in a nutshell what I do. But what I like to say is it's all about a journey. And my group on Facebook is called Journey to Empowerment. It is a journey. No matter where we are in the journey, it's still a journey. We're all creating better versions of ourselves and going forward with it. And one thing I would like to say to anyone listening is that, you know, this period is a good example of saying that crisis happens. It does. Nobody plans for it. Nobody wishes for it. Nobody prays for it, but it happens. And when it happens, we've got to deal with it. You know, the resources that we've got on the inside of us, the strength of character that we've got, it comes out even more during a crisis. So how are we building ourselves? What kind of personal development are we encouraging? What kind of character building things are we looking at? You know, what kind of mindset are we building on? Because if the foundation is not there, what can we build on that? So this is a time that we can self-reflect. We can go back and reflect on things. We can educate ourselves, and we can create better versions of ourselves.
I love that. I love that, Tola. It's so important. Some of the things you're talking about, being like you're always a leader. It just depends on, you know, how you're showing up. And my question to you: do you have hope for the leadership, not just in the U.S., but how leaders are reacting to the crisis around the world?
What I would say is that when it comes to crisis, there is no right or wrong answer. There isn't, because at the end of the day, this is a crisis. This is something that wasn't planned for. They're getting information from different sources, and with all due respect to our leaders, they are doing the best they know how to. Our Prime Minister said just recently, I think it was yesterday, it, in a few months, perhaps a year, we'll be able to look back at this situation and there will be lessons learned from this. But right now, we just have to do what we need to do to make sure that more and more people are safe. So leadership has got to be authentic. You've got to be able to say, I'm not wrong 100% of the time. There's nothing like that. I'm not right 100% of the time. I am vulnerable. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to do the best that I can in this particular situation. And leadership also can learn from their followers. I mean, none of our leaders are medical practitioners or clinicians or, that kind of thing. All of the decisions that are making at this time, they're getting their information and their data from scientists and clinicians and doctors and what have you. So they're juggling all of this information together and they're trying to make the best decisions that they think would help. And they're juggling balls. So how do we keep the people safe? How do we ensure that the economy doesn't go to pot, in trying to do that? It's always a difficult situation for leaders to be in. But the most important thing is to be authentic and show up and say, this is what I think. There can be uncertainty, but there can still be clarity about what we want to achieve. We want to make sure that more people stay alive. We want to make sure that the curve is flattened. We want to make sure, I'm no clinician, those are the things we want to make sure of. But does anybody know the rate at which COVID-19 is multiplying, or the rate at which the infection is taking hold, or exactly what we need to do to stop this crisis? That's uncertainty. But we are clear about the fact that we wanted to have as little effect as possible in the time period. So that is a great example of what leadership is all about.
I love that, Tola. And one more question before we go to our last speaker. When I was looking at some of the statistics, since 2007, African American women have actually increased, or have actually grown their businesses by 167%. So the number of African American women businesses that have started, it's crazy. But when I look at other stats where the challenges are in getting access to capital. So my question to you, as a leader, how do Black women entrepreneurs gain more access to capital if they want to sustain their businesses? What are some of the ways in which they can do that?
Well, I would say there are a number of ways. So I would say one is the formal route, and then secondly is the informal route. So the formal route, I don't know too much about the States, but in the UK, you could have grants, you have business link, you have, you can go through the job center and get some free training about how to start up in business. Those are the formal routes. They're available to everybody. And sometimes, some of the things that we've talked about before, the mindset, the belief of, am I actually good enough? If I go and present myself for this grant, will I actually get turned down? And sometimes even the preparation, if we don't prepare properly for a meeting or for a discussion and then you get turned down, then you might end up saying, oh, it's because I'm Black, or it's because I'm this and that. So we need to do our preparation. We need to, business planning and all that. people don't really like to talk about planning, but these are some of the things that they will look at in deciding who gets a particular grant, who gets a particular funding. So that's the formal route. And I want to talk about the informal route because, interestingly, on Saturday, I'm going to be having an overview of creating economic inclusion in the Black community. Because, as I said, my background is in financial services, so I'm never too far away from my roots, isn't it? So the informal route is, it's great to see so many Black women on this panel now, and we're talking about business, we're talking about making a difference, we're talking about mindset, we're talking about so many things. So it's about having a community of people, talk about crowdfunding, for instance, talk about helping. I mean, we can also look at examples that have worked, talk about the Jewish community, for instance. They are so integrated within themselves. They help themselves. They coach themselves. That word coaching comes in again. They mentor each other to go into business, to take after each other. They are trained in it. Because the truth of the matter is that sometimes as individuals, we think that we can just go and start a business. And I know somebody has already talked about a business failing. Now, statistically, what is the reasons why business fail? Most businesses will fail in the first year of operation. What is the reason why business fail? And I would like to say that one of the reasons is that people want to set up as a barber, a hairdresser, a shoe shop, what have you. And they know everything they need to know about hairdressing. They can color hair all day long. They can braid hair and they can do this and they can do that. The barber can do all this nice and funky styles and all that. But the actual business, they don't know anything about it. By being a great stylist does not make you a great businesswoman. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And there are aspects of business that people don't have the skills or the aptitude for. Now, it's the time to, again, we're talking about self-assessment and self-awareness. Know what you're great at and know what you're not so good at. And be able to delegate those aspects that you're not so great at or outsource it. Get a virtual assistant to do some of those things for you, because those are the things that actually make the business grow or not grow, fail or succeed. So those are the things that we need to look at. And I would dare to say that within the African Black community, we tend to be like one-man shops. So me and me business type thing, me, my name, and I, that kind of thing. And there is no growth. There is no continuity. There is no succession planning. The business stands with us and ends with us. Even some of the big names, I mean, I come from a Nigerian background. Some of the big names in Nigeria, you hear about Dangote, he's on Forbes list of whatever and everything like that. But it's just his name. But we have to change that culture of it's got to be my name on the signboard. We've got to change that. We've got to work together. We've got to collaborate. And we've got to create that economic power within our own community. That's how every other community did it. Because while we are still small businesses and we have that tag, then we are not going to see real growth. We're not going to see real development. So it's time to start talking to each other and having conversations and saying, would you rather own 100% of nothing, or would you like to own 10% of something that is going to be great, that can give a legacy to our children, that can put our names on the map, that can create development within our environment, that can bring development to Africa, Asia, and what have you. And again, who's going to do it for us? Nobody else. They can say they're taking AIDS, or people say they're taking AIDS to Africa and all of these places. But we know what the real needs are, and we know what the people on the ground, what they need, what they're suffering, the mindset shift that is required. And we are the ones that are going to take that message back there.
I love that. And Tola, where can people, you talked about your Facebook Facebook group. Is there any other place that you want people to go if they want to learn more about your work?
I've sent my website link to you, so I think
Perfect.
that will be available. On the website, there are some free resources there that people can download, and also they can feel free to contact me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And moving right along, I believe we have two more people. So if I don't call your name out, let me know. We might have had some people jump on. But I'm going to move on next to Dr. Chantel Teasdale, and I'm hoping I pronounced your name correctly. A little bit about her. She earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Health Administration and Executive Management from Oregon State University, and Master of Public Health, Bachelor of Science, and Certificate, what is that?
Gerontology.
Gerontology, thank you, from the University of South Carolina. So she's going to be talking about, being an entrepreneur, being a human, going to weave this conversation in. She also currently working on a book anthology, Behind the Scenes of a Phenomenal Woman, featuring the phenomenal stories of 24 women. So thank you so much for being on this panel.
Yeah. And actually, I guess I should update it. The anthology is done now. It's out, but it's very good. But yeah, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation and listening at the stories of all these great Black women entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur now for many years, ever since graduate school. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 20 some years. And what I always say as an entrepreneur, I like to look at the value that entrepreneur is bringing. Each entrepreneur is solving some type of solution. They are solving, when I say a solution, they're solving a problem. There's somebody Googling right now, and each one of these ladies on here is the solution to something somebody's Googling right now. So, and I say, yes, you are correct with the statistics. Women are becoming entrepreneurs at a high rate. And every woman have a talent. And what I've learned and found out in these uncertain times is I also am a contributing writer for a magazine. And I did a story on a local entrepreneur. And I picked her because she fit the story that I was writing on. And I've noticed in these uncertain times, a lot of women who may not have been entrepreneurs before, or either were entrepreneurs, but now they're trying to get those 7 streams of income, they're beginning to turn passion into profit during these uncertain times. And it's not hard to do. It's just overcoming the obstacles and barriers. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, our obstacles and barriers are our own mind. And I think we've had a couple of women here on the panel to speak about mindset. Your mind is very powerful. Your mind can either help you as an entrepreneur, or it can destroy you as an entrepreneur. And it even can do a third thing. It can stop you and be a prevention from you moving on to what may be that dream landing for you. So it's very important for an entrepreneur to have that right mindset. If you find yourself in the track, or where you're feeling stuck or stopped, then sometimes we have to maybe renew our minds. There's nothing wrong with resetting. And I think what has happened during this time, and we're dealing with 2 things. We're dealing with the pandemic, and we're also dealing with racism issues. But both of these had allowed, especially the Black entrepreneur, an opportunity to reset, recharge, re-engage, refocus. And I found what I said, reset. But it's allowed us to do a lot of those things that we may have not taken the time to do because we're so busy with that normal world that we were in prior to the pandemic. But now we're having an opportunity to do. This whole racism thing has brought another opportunity to Black businesses. There's a lot of support out here right now for Black businesses. And I encourage every Black entrepreneur to seek out those opportunities and to actually, let them be to your benefit. Let those be a door that's opening for you. So my thing if I had to leave any words with any entrepreneur, that would be to, again, and it's been said on this thing, know your value, know what you bring to the table, know what solution or problem you're solving, make sure you have a strategic plan to carry out and execute that, whatever business or product or service that you provide. Have your marketing and delivery plan together and hit the pavement and work, deliver. Let your business manifest. The opportunity is here now, and take advantage of this great opportunity. Don't worry about the color of your skin. Don't worry about who else is doing it. When you go on the aisle in the grocery store, you have about 40 different types of bread you can choose from. It may be you that want Texas toast. It may be you that want wheat, or you that want rye. Consider your business the same way. Know your niche. Know how you're going to differentiate what you're doing from what everybody else and your competitors are doing. And on that note, take time to know who your competitors are, know what they're offering, so you can know how you're going to differentiate yourself. And I just wish all entrepreneurs well. This is our day. This is our time. Let's set sail.
I love that. And if people want to connect with you, I know you are offering a 30-minute business consultation.
I'm offering a free 30-minute business consultation. They can reach me. I'm on social media. Best way to reach me is send me a message through Facebook. It's Chantelle, Chantelle. Last name Teasdale, Teasdell. As well as they can look me up on the, I have a page there, which is Metro, METRO, BizConnect. BizConnect is one word, BizConnect. We are beginning to air in the next 2 weeks our live show, where we actually will be doing live business-to-business connections as well as business-to-customer connections.
I love it. I love it. And if you want to connect with any of these women on the panel, that might be
oh, absolutely. Platform. I encourage all of them, just reach out to me, and sure, we'd be happy to have you on the show and help you with whatever urgent business needs you may have. We may can match you with someone for that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to move on. I believe we have one more person, Melinda Jackson. You want to go ahead and unmute your mic, or I can go ahead. Oh, there she is.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I just want to share a little bit about Melinda. She is a strategist, a speaker, digital course creator, and a world traveler. She's also a nonprofit founder, and her mission and vision, we're going to be talking about social impact. I know she helps people to create, or actually one of her passions is creating digital courses. So Melinda, thank you so much for being on this panel.
Yes, Heather, thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yes, yes. So tell us a little bit about,
perfect.
About social impact, what it is, why it's so important, tying it into doing something that is good in the world.
Yeah, and that's a really great question. So when I think of social impact, I think of it as like anything that we do that is aimed at solving like a social or environmental issue that our world is experiencing. And there are a lot. If anything, if we've been going through lately has taught us anything, is that the world has there are so many issues that are happening in our world, and that we each have kind of a unique opportunity to contribute a solution to any one of those issues. And so that's kind of how I view what social impact is. And I think what I do kind of in my business and But yeah, so as I'm counseling people, as I'm, through my digital courses, people to actually create and launch and design social impact ideas, people don't necessarily get tripped up on wanting to create solutions. It's about the how. So sometimes people think, oh, if I want to do something good in the world, it has to be a charity. Whereas it's like, no, you can also start a profitable business that is centered around solving a social or environmental issue. And that's kind of where I specialize. You can, maybe be an activist, or you can be an entrepreneur. So maybe you work for a large corporation. You can, work within that structure to create change, maybe optimizing, I don't know, you can be an entrepreneur, which is kind of the area that I really like to work with folks in, and be, a grassroots activist. You can be an entrepreneur, so you can work to create change within, larger structures that already exist. So there are a lot of options when it comes to social impact. So I view my job as helping people to really understand what options kind of resonate with them. And then on the entrepreneurial side is to help people to kind of create these new and innovative businesses where there is still that deep focus on profit, but that profit isn't seen as the ultimate bottom line, that there are additional factors that kind of come into this beautiful balance. And help us to use business as a means of creating that change in the world, and as a means of change that's going to be sustainable and also scalable. So that's kind of, what I do. And I developed a big passion for this. And, I really see the potential that lies, particularly with entrepreneurs, to help create that sustainable change that I think our world so desperately needs. So especially in this time, I'm very, very adamant about making sure that I show up and help people to know that they have options, and to help people to know that, their work is important, and that that work can look a variety of different ways.
I love that. And you also have a podcast, the People Making Things Better podcast. So do you talk about creating your business into this kind of format?
So for People Making Things Better, we have had guests on the show that do talk about that a little bit. It's really awesome. Some of the ways that people innovate are just incredible. We've had guests come on, like one, for instance, she is a real estate investor in the greater Los Angeles area, and she's found a way to kind of build in like a sort of safety net protection program, so that when things like, COVID, which of course couldn't have been really, predicted in a lot of ways in terms of the scale, when things like that happen, that she's able to pull from this fund to help to create stability for her residents. So, someone wouldn't necessarily think of, real estate development as an avenue through which change can be made, but for a city that has, like, I think the largest unsheltered homeless population in all of the United States, things like that, programs like that, safety net funds like that are really important to make sure that people, no matter what life's ups and downs may bring, can feel stable in their homes. So that's just, one example of someone that we've had on. We had another brilliant company, AgriCycle Global, who has different ethical brands that are under their umbrella, and they help to empower rural women farmers in I think in Kenya and a few other East African countries, but they essentially help these women who farm fruit to be able to dry that fruit on site using really simple technology. And as a result, the women are able to get a lot more money for the fruit. And then they sell back the dried fruit to the company, who then sells it on the market as, like, dried fruit snacks. So as a result, those women make about 7 times the amount of money that they would that they would going to market and selling the fruit. There's less fruit that goes bad. There's less food waste. So there's an environmental and it's a profitable enterprise. So they've used that market-based solution and we're able to create this new supply chain. So we talk to folks like that who are thinking about what it is that the world needs and asking questions about, who can we help and how can we help them and how could we integrate profit into it. So we focus a lot on that on the show. And then for me, kind of in my business and what I do with my courses is actually to help people who feel moved by these sorts of things or feel excited about like this kind of work and this kind of innovation to actually be able to design, a business themselves that has that component where it's focused on the impact. So it's really, especially in the times we find ourselves in, it's really encouraging to see all of the kind of innovation that's happening in this space. And I think that there's a lot of negatives that have come with this pandemic and the circumstances that have surrounded it. But I think one of the positive things is that a lot more people are of the mindset that we can't go back to what we were kind of referring to as normal. Like we're at a tipping point where now is the time where we can reimagine and revision the type of world that we want to live in. And I'm so proud to see so many people who are kind of taking that internal look and seeing, how, who am I, what do I do, and how can I be a part of this reimagining for our world? So I get to be right in the middle of all that, which is awesome.
I love that. It's such a beautiful cause. And I really do feel like when I look at what's going on, we're having kind of like this spiritual awakening where we're all realizing like we all have to play a part with what is going on. And a lot of times when you see with the corporations, very rarely are they going to play a part like we would, in
Right.
these types of businesses. So I really find that what you're teaching and helping people with is very inspiring and will create a catalyst for change. So where can people learn more about you and your work and your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast again is called People Making Things Better. And it's literally about exactly what it sounds like, people in the world that are making things better. And we have interviewed some incredible people, incredible stories on there. And you can find our podcast on Anchor FM, so ANCHOR. And then we're also on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and a few other platforms, but those are kind of the three main ones where people find us. And then if you are looking for me, you can find me online on my website, which is www.melindamakes.change. So M as in Mary, ELINDA. exchange.com, and there I have all of my digital course offerings, and you can even schedule or email me if you're interested in potentially connecting and getting some one-on-one sorts of coaching help, or even if you have a corporation that you work for, put in place a impact strategy. Those are also things I can help with. So yep, www.melindamakes.change.com.
Great. And we had a couple of audio glitches, but we'll make sure we put those links below. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I just muted everyone right now. And kind of the last thing as we wrap this up, first off, thank you so much, everyone, for your time, your energy, your inspiration, your stories. And I just want to open it up to anyone, kind of have an open panel discussion. And talking about, like, I was thinking about being a white female entrepreneur and everyone that is out there and watching, what can everyone else do to create unity, to create a support system so we are lifting up not only the Black community, but particularly Black female entrepreneurs? Like, what are some of the ways that you feel are best? And anyone can answer this question.
Well, I think there is always room and opportunity for more collaborations. A lot of times we tend to collaborate only with our immediate circle or our niche or our people that we are very familiar with. But I think now, with all the technology, and we're doing most things virtual and online and remote now anyway, there's an opportunity to connect and collaborate with people of all races and people at any geographic location.
I love that. Yeah. So anyone that has a podcast that's watching, reach out to these women, invite them onto your show. I really feel it is important to create that unity collaboration. Another thing that I would want to bring up, and anyone can answer this, is maybe some of the prejudgments that lead to misconception and misunderstanding for Black women. I'm just kind of curious, like, what are some of the things that you have come across that you want to say, no, I really want to educate you on this?
I think that some of the things that we encounter are definitely the persona of the what it is to be what people call a strong Black woman. And I think that that's one of the biggest kind of like stereotypes we hear, because then so many people feel intimidated. I know I've personally experienced that a lot, even in the education profession. I was a high school teacher for 12 years. And so going into these rooms where there are either several diverse faces or not many faces that looked like me at all, depending on what school I was working for, there were a lot of assumptions that my maybe stern personality or very professional demeanor meant that what people perceived as strength was not always, it didn't always make other people feel welcomed in a sense. And so I think that there's a strong misconception about a lot of times what the Black female personality is like, because we often have to work so hard to get recognized. The data is there that says what Black women in America earn on average 60% less than other people in the same professions that we work. Because of these things, you may often see that we may seem to be a little more serious or a little more laser focused. But the misconception about us is that these stereotypes mean that we don't feel pain, we don't have emotions, we're not reachable, when in fact we are. And I think that removing those barriers from what we assume Black women are, or who we assume Black women will be before we even have the chance to talk to them, makes a big difference. And I think that's plays into what you said about how to build relationships with Black women professionally. Once you get into conversations, I think we discover that we are all so much more alike than we are different. And I remember when I worked next door to a fellow English teacher who was a white woman that was a little bit older than me, and then I was a young Black teacher, and the kids knew that we were the two powerhouse teachers in the school. But the most wonderful thing about our relationship is that it was not just school-based. Outside of our school, we actually had a personal relationship that was based on things that we learned about each other. And so if we step back from the table first and just look at each other from the aspect of being human beings, women who are trying to survive, women that are trying to make it, and truthfully with empathy and compassion, because there are a lot of barriers and obstacles that Black women do face out here that other people may not be able to relate to. But understanding that those things do exist and still being willing to step over that line and say, how can we make this happen together, I think is a big way that we can see our businesses continue to thrive together.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have any thoughts around that, or any other topics maybe that we didn't dig into that you feel is important?
I have a comment to that. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that I think there is this Black women entrepreneurs. There is how do I say? Our value and our quality of work is underestimated a lot of times. We bring great value to the table. Our quality of work is normally far exceeds one's expectations because they've already had a very low expectation for the quality of our work. But as the previous panelist just said, Black women work very, very hard. And we know that we have to work harder than most other women of other races. So the majority of the time, you're going to get far beyond what you're expecting. but there's already that sense of having a low expectation and expecting a low quality of work. Therefore, a lot of times, I think that's where, as she said, it's 60% less. That's why a lot of times people do not want to pay a Black entrepreneur or a Black business the price that they're asking.
And that's why I love what Maureen was talking about, which was brain power and what she's doing to help revolutionize the feelings of confidence. And I feel like it's so important to Black female entrepreneurs. And I was completely into what you were saying because I went through the experience for many years. And especially my expertise as a writer, as a woman who has a degree in English and then has 2 degrees in education, and I was still underselling myself at the table, even though every time I left, my customers, my audience were completely satisfied. I would have people still trying to connect with me. I undersold myself for years and then overworked myself. And what you said today was so powerful, and it really touched me a lot because I can completely relate to that. But once again, when I come in the room as a Black entrepreneur, I'm always underestimated. And so I have to see the value in myself differently. And I have to receive a lot more no's than other people do. But in the end, I can see now that it's worth it. And that was so great.
If I can add to that, well, first of all, let me just say, Heather, thank you so much for bringing together this, powerful Black women. Thank you so much for the opportunity as well. I want to say education is one of the ways in which we can reach out to even non-Blacks as well as, the Black female entrepreneurs. A lot of the things that we've talked about, the mindsets, the underpricing, all of the things that we've talked about, it's about educating ourselves. It's about talking more about the possibilities rather than the negatives and the stereotypes and the things that have held us down for so long. It's about, educating ourselves. Even when you talk about the unconscious bias, I've had conversations with people, non-Blacks as well, to say that the unconscious bias is actually more dangerous than the outright racism. Because for the person who is unconsciously biased, they actually don't know themselves to be racist. And they are the ones that will pipe up and say, no, I'm not racist. But it goes beyond that. What makes you see, a Black person and straight away you say, oh, I'm scared. And straight away you feel uneasy. And straight away you feel nervous. And straight away you feel like, asking questions about how did you get this job and, why are you in this place kind of thing. Those are unconscious bias because these same people will say, oh, I'm not racist. I have XYZ as a Black friend. That's not enough. And, in a sense, I thank God for what's happening now because it's given us the opportunity to actually communicate. It's given us the opportunity for people to ask questions, and it's given us opportunity to say it's okay that you don't understand, but that you're willing to learn.
Yeah. Are you willing? Yeah.
So that's a first step. That is something. But for you to say no, it doesn't exist, and shut down the experiences of a whole community of people, that is wrong in itself. But to say, I've never walked in your shoes, I may never walk in your shoes, I don't pretend to understand, but I'm willing to learn. It's also a form of education. And we must learn to educate. We must learn to interact and educate one another, and to be able to do so not in in an aggressive or in an arrogant sort of way, but knowing that we have to humble ourselves on whatever side of the divide we belong to, and humble ourselves to say, this is the reality, this is what's going on. Because like I read in an article, I think it was just today, it's not just Black people's problem, because whatever happens, it affects everybody in the long run. So
Yes.
if we look at it and say, oh, it's black people, the black people have to sort it, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We all have to come together and see it as a world problem, and we have
Yes.
to sort it out together. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
education at various levels in the schools. Why are we not teaching Black history so that people understand? There are many children. I mean, we've got our children who were born in the United Kingdom, born in the USA, who don't even understand the real history behind slavery and all of these things. And they're asking us questions as well and say, so why is this? Why is that? Why do they so hate us? Why is this happening? Our children are asking us those questions. And that is a failure on the part of the educational system to not reflect that in their curriculum as well. So education at all levels is something that we need to help us, all of us, whether we're black, female, male, white, and what have you, to go through this period. It's like there is a cleansing that's happening, and we just have to get on board with it and learn from it.
That's true.
Yeah, and there's a point that Tola made that I would love to expand on. I think one of the things that sometimes people can get the idea of, oh, if I'm, diversifying, or I'm giving, Black women a seat at the table, that this is like, oh, we should do it, because it's, the right thing to do. And I think it is a thing to do, but also, we lose, all of us, when the voices of Black women, entrepreneurs are made prominent at the table. The example I always give is with the film Hidden Figures. When you think about Katherine Johnson and all that she did in terms of like the space race and helping, when you think about Katherine Johnson and all she contributed to the space race and how, the US was in competition with Russia, part of the reason the US lost that competition is partially because of racism. Katherine Johnson's existed that never got a chance, that were upon, that were thought to not be good enough. I mean, we could have been to space, so we don't always think about it in that context, but it's not just that, it's, a charitable thing to do to, raise the voices of those that are marginalized, but it works in all of our interests to make sure that innovation, that genius, no matter what body it is and no matter what skin color it has an opportunity to thrive in this country. And if you are a white entrepreneur, like when Black entrepreneurs don't have their rightful seat, you just do. So I think we all have to think about it in that context as well. Not just we do this for the sake of, or diversity is a good thing, but like, why is it a good thing, and what do we miss when we don't make sure that voices are being heard and that people have their rightful seat at the table.
Yeah, I think, can I just add that, added to what Melinda said, is that it's so important to realize that what different people bring to the table adds great value. So if you just focus on one aspect and say, okay, you've got a whole bunch of white people, it's like the same ideas, it's the same thinking. But when you add more to it, then there's a lot, you're bringing a lot of creativity, a lot of insight from different people. So it's really important. And I think one thing that I would say is just being able to listen to us would make such a difference. Because a lot of times people feel that, okay, we're not racist. We know, we understand. But the fact is that you can't understand until you really listen, to really hear what we are saying. And that's the way we'll be able to really work together. And it's actually not being afraid to hear the answers and being able to be receptive to those answers and know that, okay, so I hear what you're saying, basically. And then we'll be able to work from there, because there's so much that we can do together than working separately. And I think it's really pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones to be able to really talk and really get things going together.
Yeah. And I'd like to actually chime in on what Maureen said. It's coming together, and I've seen, and I answered the post that you sent out, Heather, but I've seen a lot of other you know white female friends, or even people that I'm in groups with, that have put out that call saying, okay, yeah, I want to help a Black woman to do this, or I want to help Black people to do that. And it's one of the things that we can possibly fall into is having that, having our white friends and counterparts come in as, the savior. I'm like, this is not
right.
This is not a time where we want you to be a savior. We want to work with you. I had a friend that actually she just sent me a message, and she's like, oh my gosh, with everything that's going on, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it totally caught me off guard, because I had no idea what she was talking about. It took me about 5 minutes, and yes, it is okay to feel sorry, but let's work together to be able to solve these problems. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to help Black female entrepreneurs, and I'm going to do this. Like, we need to want the help as well. This needs to be, even if you're coming in and saying, okay, you know what, I see what you're doing. I think that, this is, I can help you in this way, or something like that. Have a mentorship attitude or something like that, rather than, okay, all right, I'm going to come in and give you the tools, because then that's also assuming that we don't have the tools. Maybe it's just that listening ear, or maybe that introduction, or, we're not, I could probably say this for myself, because I'm not sure about everyone else, but I come from a place where I have been looked at as a Black female, and as someone that is coming from another country, even though I'm still Black. Like, I'm coming from Jamaica, and some people, Black and white, they may think that I may be, I guess, lesser or whatever. People don't look at me and they don't see, okay, I am the daughter of an educator. They don't see that, okay, I am a manager at one of the top car companies. I'm a marketing manager at one of the top car companies in America. They don't see that. They may just look at the color of my skin and say, okay, she needs help, or she needs a handout. It's talking to us, getting to know exactly what we need from you, getting to know exactly how you can really help us, then coming and saying, okay, here am I'm going to help.
I think it comes down to what Black women need is opportunity. We don't, we have the knowledge, we have the skill set. None of that has to be proven, but quite often we're not even welcomed into the circle. I think about things like, I joined my local chamber of commerce, and we have 200 and something members, and we may have 10 Black females. And I live in a community where the population of African Americans is probably like 70%. But we don't have that many, because they don't feel welcome and engaged. So it's not a matter of us feeling that, oh, we need anybody to give us a hand up or anything of that. It's that the opportunities are often denied on the basis of assumptions about us. So being open to that conversation, open to engagement, and being willing to be an advocate, because the first thing that has to happen, and I can't speak for our sisters who are in the UK, but here within the US, this country has got to be very honest about the fact that systems were put in place to ensure that Black people did not achieve above a certain amount of success. And when we became too successful during periods like Reconstruction, then things like Jim Crow were put into place to knock us down a notch. And so these systems have always been in place in this country, and they continue to be in place now, and they are limiting things like access to certain things that we need in order to go to the next level. And so if we admit that this is a part of this country, that's one of the first things that kind of takes a weight off of us, because admitting that now means that we can have some accountability going forward. Individual actions will not create a change in the culture of this country. Getting this country to address the laws that are in place will be the only thing that actually causes us to see a change in education. Why don't we have Black history in textbooks? Because we don't want to address the fact that slavery sustained this country. We don't want to talk about the fact that there were so many Black people who had inventions that they could never get a patent for or get credit for. And right now there are people who are still reaping the benefits of these very inventions. So individually, we can do so much in our day-to-day actions to make sure that we reflect the character of people who are unified and valuable. But in this country has got to be willing to admit that the system has been put in place in order to limit the success of us, and making our voices heard with what's going on right now, making the noise that we are right now. That's the way to make it happen. So not being afraid to speak up about this and to use your voice as well to help move this movement forward, in my opinion, is a great way to help us all see more equality and for Black women to get more opportunities.
Well, ladies, I want to end on that note. It's so powerful and educational and inspirational. And I just want to take the time to thank every single person. This has been 2 hours of just amazing conversations with successful Black women entrepreneurs that have their own vision, mission, and purpose. So thank you so much. I want to continue these conversations and potentially have something like this in the future or interview you individually. So thank you so much for coming on this panel today.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Heather.
Thank you for the
Really
opportunity.
Heather.